There is a specific, compulsive, almost magnetic force that pulls you toward a crisis, a force that activates the moment you see someone struggling, whether it is a stranger dropping their groceries, a friend venting about a bad relationship, or a colleague overwhelmed by work. And before your conscious mind can even assess if you have the time or the energy to intervene, your mouth has already opened to say, "Let me help you with that," or "I can fix this for you." You have probably felt it, this physical inability to sit on your hands when you witness difficulty, this deep internal itch that can only be scratched by stepping in and taking over, leaving you with a schedule that is bursting with obligations that aren't yours, and a life that feels more like a customer service center than a personal existence. People who always offer help aren't just generous or kind-hearted. They're often operating from a complex psychological baseline where their sense of safety is entangled with their utility, creating a reality where they believe that they only deserve to take up space in the world if they are paying rent in the form of service. To the outside world, you look like a saint, the reliable one, the person who would give the shirt off their back. But internally, you are likely running on fumes, driven by a high-functioning anxiety that whispers that if you stop being useful, you will cease to be loved. There is a profound psychology behind this trait, often rooted in the concept of transactional worth, which usually begins in childhood environments where love was conditional or inconsistent. You may have learned very early on that you were praised only when you were helpful, when you were the good girl or the responsible boy who made life easier for the adults, effectively training your nervous system to associate self-sacrifice with survival. This creates a personality structure known as the helper archetype, where your identity is completely wrapped up in what you can do for others rather than who you are, leading to a deep subconscious fear that without your helpfulness, you are empty or unlovable. This wiring makes it physically painful for you to say no or to watch someone fail, because seeing someone struggle triggers your own abandonment wounds, forcing you to intervene not just to save them, but to soothe your own anxiety about being useless. However, this compulsive helping has a shadow side that is rarely discussed, which is the desire for control. When you step in to fix someone's life, you are effectively managing the chaos, predicting the outcome, and reducing the uncertainty that makes you anxious, meaning that your helping is often less about the other person's needs and more about your own need to organize your environment. It gives you a temporary sense of power and competence in a world that feels unpredictable, because as long as you are the one holding the map, you cannot get lost. And as long as you are the rescuer, you never have to be the victim. This dynamic is particularly toxic in romantic relationships where you attract projects rather than partners, falling for people who are broken, addicted, or emotionally immature because their neediness validates your purpose. You become the architect of their life, writing their resume, managing their finances, and soothing their tantrums, believing that this is love, when in reality it is a form of benevolent domination, where you act as the parent and they remain the perpetual child. This leads to a dangerous consequence known as enabling, because when you always offer help, you inadvertently rob people of their own agency and their own learning curve. By catching them every time they fall, you prevent them from learning how to stand up, creating a cycle of learned helplessness where they become dependent on your intervention and you become resentful of their incompetence. You might find yourself complaining that no one helps me, or I have to do everything myself, not realizing that you have trained the people around you to be passive by constantly over-functioning for them. This resentment is the inevitable aftertaste of compulsive helping, a bitter feeling that bubbles up when you realize that your sacrifices are not being reciprocated, and that the people you saved are often entitled to your labor rather than grateful for it. Biologically, this behavior is reinforced by a potent neurochemical cocktail because helping others releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone, and dopamine, the reward chemical, giving you a literal helper's high that is addictive. You become hooked on the rush of being needed, on the validation of being the solution, and this addiction can blind you to your own exhaustion. You might ignore your body's signals of burnout, the migraines, the chronic fatigue, the irritability, pushing through the pain because the dopamine hit of saving the day is the only way you know how to feel good about yourself. This is why you might feel a strange, hollow depression when things are calm or when no one needs you, because without the external validation of a crisis, you are forced to confront your own lack of self-worth. The psychology of the always helper is also linked to a deep avoidance of the self, because as long as you are busy fixing someone else's sink or someone else's marriage or someone else's career, you do not have to look at the leaks in your own life. Helping becomes a magnificent distraction, a socially acceptable way to procrastinate on your own dreams and your own healing, because you can always say, "I'm too busy taking care of everyone else," as an excuse for why you haven't written that book, started that business, or left that toxic situation. You hide behind your nobility, using your service as a shield against your own vulnerability, because it is much safer to be the strong one who gives than the vulnerable one who receives.
But the cost of this avoidance is high, leading to a state of compassion fatigue, where your empathy reserves are completely dry, yet you continue to perform the motions of caring like a robot. You start to secretly dislike the people you are helping, viewing their calls as burdens and their problems as annoyances, yet you pick up the phone anyway because the compulsion is stronger than the exhaustion. This creates a split in your personality where you present a smiling, available face to the world while internally you are screaming for space, creating a dissonance that eats away at your mental health. The turning point for the compulsive helper comes when they realize that help is not helpful if it is not asked for, and that unsolicited advice or intervention is actually a violation of boundaries. You must learn the concept of detachment with love, which means caring about someone without taking responsibility for their outcome. It is the realization that people have the right to make their own mistakes, to face their own consequences, and to walk their own difficult paths, and that your interference, no matter how well-intentioned, is often an act of ego rather than love. This shift requires you to tolerate the discomfort of watching someone struggle, to sit on your hands when you want to fix it, and to trust that they are resilient enough to figure it out without you. You have to ask yourself the hard question: am I helping them because they need it, or am I helping them because I need to be needed? This introspection is painful because it strips away the martyr identity and forces you to confront the fact that you have been buying love with labor. Realizing that you are worthy of love simply because you exist, not because of what you do, is the hardest and most important lesson you will ever learn. It requires you to set boundaries that feel selfish at first, to say no when you are tired, to let a silence hang without filling it with an offer of assistance, and to allow people to be disappointed in your unavailability. When you stop over-helping, you will lose people, specifically the parasites and the energy vampires who are only there for what you provided. But you will also make space for genuine relationships where you are loved for your essence, not your utility. You will reclaim the energy you have been hemorrhaging and direct it toward your own life, becoming the hero of your own story rather than the supporting character in everyone else's. You will learn that true generosity comes from a place of overflow, not depletion, and that the most powerful way to help the world is to be a healthy, rested, and self-sustaining individual who models what it looks like to respect one's own limits. So take a deep breath and put down the weight of the world. It was never yours to carry. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to have needs, and you are allowed to watch a crisis unfold without jumping into the fire. Your value is not in your hands or your output. It is in your heart and your presence. Stop trying to earn a place that is already yours, and start trusting that you are enough even when you are doing absolutely nothing for anyone else.